You stand here this day, all of you, before your God, your tribal heads, your elders, and your officials, every household in Israel, even the stranger within your camp. I make this covenant both with those who are standing here today and those who are not. Each year, Parshat Nitzavim comes to remind us that none of us walks into this new year alone. Before the Israelites entered their promised land, Moses tells them that the landscape of their future is dotted with promise and pitfalls. If they remember the covenant, their children and the land will flourish. If they stray, however, the people and the land will wither. The theology of the promised land is a theology of interconnection, of mutual obligation and common cause. Standing on the cusp of 5783, looking out over a landscape of promise and pitfall, blessing and curse, we are reminded again of what we owe one another and the threads which bind us in shared fate. You might be following the story of the Pride Alliance at Yeshiva University, a group of LGBTQ students and allies who sued YU last year for discrimination when the Orthodox University refused to officially recognize them, claiming that the club conflicted with YU's interpretation of Torah. A New York State court ordered the university to recognize the Pride Alliance, noting that as an educational institution, YU is prohibited from discriminating against its students on the basis of sexual orientation and gender. When the United States Supreme Court declined to intervene for now, YU announced it would cancel all student clubs rather than recognize the Pride Alliance. This act offers an uncomfortable reminder of what happened in 1963 in Jackson, Mississippi, when rather than integrate its public swimming pools, the city simply closed all of the pools. On Wednesday, the Pride Alliance agreed to a stay of the New York court's ruling in the interests of their fellow students while they pursued the case in New York's appellate court. The law at issue in this case is the New York City human rights law, which prohibits discrimination in employment, housing, and public accommodations. Protected classes under this law include race, religion, sexual orientation, and gender. A dissent in the Supreme Court's decision telegraphs what is at stake as if this case moves forward. Justice Alito wrote, "A state's imposition of its own mandatory interpretation of Scripture is a shocking development that calls out for review." Think about it. The implications of this statement are far-reaching and terrifying. Justice Alito is framing this issue as one of religious freedom, the freedom of Orthodox Jews to interpret Scripture in a way that forbids homosexuality. He argues that their right of religious freedom trumps the students' right to equal treatment under the law. If this case makes its way to the Supreme Court, it could legalize discrimination against religious minorities and other vulnerable populations under the guise of religious liberty. And this endorsement of discrimination will be done in the name of Judaism. There is an irony to YU's involvement in this case. Jews are a minority religion in the United States, a protected class that depends on constitutional protections for our continued freedom. Dismantling those protections will not end well for us or any group which relies on them. In the words of renowned civil rights litigator Roberta Kaplan, we should know better. Going down this road is incredibly dangerous for Jews who are and always have been a small minority. The historical record is unambiguous. It has never gone well for us in the past, when rather than secular pluralism, the government of a nation in which we have lived has tried to assert domination by the majority faith. YU, a storied and beloved Jewish institution, is leading us away from American democracy toward Christian theocracy by erasing the rights of their most vulnerable students. If this becomes a precedent, all of us will pay the price. I am aware how it can sound for a Reform rabbi to criticize an Orthodox Jewish institution, but this is not an attack on orthodoxy. Far from it. Over 1,500 YU alumni have publicly protested YU's treatment of the Pride Alliance. In an open letter to their school's leadership, they write, "Let us be clear. As fellow Jews, we support and will continue to support the well-being of LGBTQ+ Jews, whether they identify as Torah observant or not. We know of many LGBTQ Jews who have lost their lives for lack of that support. This is a matter of pikuach nefesh, of preserving human life." It is not orthodoxy that is at issue here, it is discrimination. In a statement released earlier this week, the students at the center of the case wrote, "YU accepted us as students. YU collects the same tuition from us as everyone else, and we will not be second-class citizens. We hope that YU will eventually accept our group for what it is, a safe place for discussion and support that LGBTQ+ students need on the YU campus to thrive." Our sages taught, Kol Yisrael aravim ze bazeh, all Israel is responsible for one another. So what happens to Jews anywhere matters to Jews everywhere. These students are our concern. Doing what we can to protect them is our obligation. As a member of the LGBTQ community and as a Reform rabbi, I disagree with any reading of Scripture that denigrates, marginalizes, or makes any queer person feel like they and their families are less than. Torah inspires us to love and respect our fellow human beings, showing a special concern for the most vulnerable among us. YU's leadership has said that its love for its queer students is unshakable, and I believe that is true. But it is important that their love be reflected in public acts. Remember these words, Atem nitzavim hayom kolchem, you stand this day, all of you. It is a powerful image of what it means to be a true community. We are bound together. We stand up for each other when our fellow communities need our support. We take our stand together, for we know that our freedom, our dignity, our safety depends on that of every other protected group in this country. Like the call of the shofar, the voices of the students at the center of this story are a call to attention. On the cusp of this new year, we stand together, all of us, looking out over the pitfalls and promise of an increasingly precarious future. Our dignity and freedom are bound up in the dignity and freedom of these students, and the dignity and freedom of all communities who have built their lives and thrived in America because they were protected from persecution and discrimination. In this new year, let us lift up our voices like a shofar and let them be heard. In this new year, let us affirm and strengthen the ties that bind us to one another. In this new year, let us stand together, all of us, and walk ever closer to that promised land. Shana Tova.